Greetings, this is Willie Muhammad with National Network View. On tonight's show, our guests Dr. Abdul, Haleem Muhammad, and Dr. Asad Malik will discuss recent comments by Master P regarding whether or not hip-hop needs a union. Later in the show, Dr. Abdul, Haleem Muhammad, and Dr. Asad will discuss Tim Scott's comments on the topic, Is America Racist? Lastly on the show, Dr. Abdul Haleem and Brother Asad, Dr. Asad, will discuss the anti-protest bills that are rising up throughout America and the attempts to silence Black voices. But before we delve into those top news stories, let us do a recap on the current events that were covered this past week with National Network View. On yesterday, I had the opportunity on I Have a Testimony show with my guest Imam Sultan Muhammad to talk about his history in the Nation of Islam. What do you see as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's significance to the Islamic world in 2 minutes?
Oh, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is a demonstration of Muhammad in modern times. So for the Islamic world to see a bold representation of freedom, justice, and equality in one of our own who has grown up here under the foot of oppression of our open enemies in this government that has generation after generation destroyed our people and are continuing to do so. He speaks truth to power. It is Muhammad, peace be upon him, that said, the greatest jihad is to speak truth to a tyrant.
NMV News anchor Tariq X spoke with Brother Ilya Rashad about the Shark Tank's Damon John's apology after remarks about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
So why, when a person speaks favorably about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, they often recant their statements? Is Damon John's apology an example of the enemy's controlling grip over him?
That's exactly what it is. And not to single out our brother Damon John, but it's a sign and an example of the enemy's controlling grip over Black people, period. Particularly our Black leaders and even our celebrities like our brother Damon John, who is a multi-millionaire. So if a multi-millionaire that's a Black man who's made success in their world has to be pressured to recant just from liking the words of the truthful words of the Honorable Minister Farrakhan, that's just another, honestly, a sad example of the controlling effect that whites, particularly certain members of the Jewish community, have over our people.
Brother Tariq also spoke with Brother Ilya Rashad about the vital role whistleblowers play in uncovering the truth about government and political corruption.
So why is the role of a whistleblower so important and vital to the common people?
Yes, whistleblowers are extremely important. The role of a whistleblower is almost like that of a prophet, in the sense that he or she exposes the wrongdoing and has the gall and the audacity to challenge the powers that be in order to expose the wrongdoing of those in power. So a whistleblower is essential if there's ever to be any sense of freedom, justice, and equality in the land, especially if you have a society that is run by oppressors, dictative oppressors, as is America, deceitful leaders, where there's so much bloodshed. And
Brother Ilya Rashad also discussed the Final Call newspaper's article about Earl Simmons, formerly known as DMX, and the remarks made by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan during his funeral.
At his funeral, several people described how he prayed and fasted before his concerts. What examples can we take from DMX's life and incorporate in our own?
You know, as Minister Farrakhan was sharing, his life was impactful. And even though he was only like 50, 51, something like that years old, when he passed, many would consider that a short life. But Minister Farrakhan pointed out that Jesus had a shorter life than what you would call than DMX.
Right, that's right.
But it's not, he's not measured by the length of years that he was on this earth. He's measured by the impact that he has, the divine impact that he has on others. So Brother DMX left us something to look at.
On a Global View segment, news anchor Rosalind Park spoke with NNV Weekly contributor Brian E. Muhammad about the persecution of Muslims and neocolonialism in Myanmar.
There have been reportedly more people killed in Myanmar. Is the country's mounting death toll and its current situation an exacerbation of old political conflicts?
It is. But what triggered what is going on right now are the November 2020 elections. The military of the country actually overthrew the country in February, just to give some background. And they were disputing the elections because the party affiliated with the military of the country lost the election in a landslide. And they decided to dispute the elections, but it was determined that the elections were free and fair by their local commission, electoral commission, and the military decided to take the country.
NNV News anchor Rosalind Parks interviewed Simone Harris, the mother of a Black man convicted of life in prison plus 527 years, about the need for prison reform.
Can you give us a little insight as to what transpired and brought about this sentence in the courtroom, and not so much what he's accused of, but the courtroom, I guess, to be specific?
He was sentenced under the Habitual Offenders Act, what pretty much states if you commit 3 crimes, you could be going to jail for the rest of your natural life. He started getting in trouble teenage years, 16. His first charge was possession of marijuana. He was also charged with stealing a car. And his most severe charge prior to his last conviction was possession of a firearm. And his last conviction was pretty much robbery, which led to the 3-strike, and I'm charging him as under the Habitual Offenders Act. So he was sentenced at that point to life plus 527 years. No murder charges were involved, and this is where we are.
NNV's weekly contributor, Dr. Keeley, updated us on the vaccine passports and mandatory vaccinations.
Why do you think the states and the government need to have vaccine cards if they are sure that the vaccines work?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because for those who may not know, the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine have never guaranteed against people transmitting nor catching the coronavirus. So it's interesting to me that we would have a vaccine passport when there isn't a place that people are comfortable with the vaccines, in that we have the ability to stop wearing masks, stop social distancing, and the threat of this the threat of this infection passing from person to person has not decreased, as we have seen a rise in the numbers recently. And so I think it's interesting for those reasons, in that if you're going to delineate a person who has been vaccinated from one that hasn't, and then start to make restrictions on the person who has not been vaccinated, what is that based on? Because it's definitely not based on whether or not the person has the ability to pass on an infection or not.
Taya Lorenzo, founder of Healthy Foods, discussed the nonprofit organization and how it is helping Black and brown communities close the gap through fitness, health, food programs, and services.
As founder of Healthyhood, a community-based nonprofit organization, how have you incorporated your experiences? I've learned that you're a dance instructor, an activist, and an athlete. Has that helped shape Healthyhood?
Yes, absolutely. I always say that me and my siblings were struggle kids because both of my parents were activists. My mother, Emma Lozano, is an immigration activist. My father, Reverend Slim Coleman, was active in the civil rights movement with SNCC, very active in the election of our first African-American mayor here in Chicago, Harold Washington. He was a member of the Rainbow Coalition of the Chicago chapter of the Black Panther Party. So we say in our family that, revolutionary blood runs in our veins just as we come out the womb. I was an athlete. I guess to say once an athlete, always an athlete. I played basketball all the way through college. And that really transitioned me into the fitness industry, which, like a lot of athletes of color, it's an easy profession to go into if you've been in sports your whole life. And it definitely has shaped the work of Healthyhood, right? I realized when I was getting this kind of education in the fitness industry that this was not the kind of education that our people had access to in the underserved communities of Chicago. And so the activist in me, thought, like, how do we put this into play in terms of creating a social justice and a community approach to what health and wellness looks like for our Black and brown communities.
Eddie Harris, who's a writer and executive producer of the movie Steps, talked about his new film being released this year, its cast, the crew, and its producers.
As the writer of the movie, can you tell us what exactly brought this subject to your attention? Why did you want to feature us dealing with trauma and addiction in this movie?
Well, Steps is a combination of real life stories that I've grown up listening to from family and friends and people in my community. I felt compelled to create a beautiful and a powerful story of hope, which would inspire others to share and join this journey, taking steps to recovery, forgiveness, redemption, and love. Steps was also an opportunity to keep people informed about issues that take place in life and build awareness in addiction, mental health, and relationships and other things.
On last week, I spoke with student minister David Muhammad of Trinidad and activist Sakia Sankara Jabbar about the guilty verdict in the Derek Chauvin murder trial and what might be the next step in this process. Some are still saying that it's too early for Black folks to be celebrating the conviction, because he may be given a lighter sentence than expected. So, Sister Sakia, what are your thoughts about that? Should Black folks be cautious about the celebration that we're seeing?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that it's okay. Like, let Black people celebrate for a minute. Like, we are constantly under siege. You know what I'm saying? I'm clear that, we still have sentencing, but I will say this for the folks who are on the front lines and working in these communities every day that are constantly under siege from these race soldiers in our community. It's okay for them to. I'm not here to tell people not to celebrate and to always just, have your warrior mode on. It's cool. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I think that, yes, of course, we would be, remiss if we weren't cautious about the time, that this individual should get. The other thing that I'm also looking for is that I believe he needs to be put in general population, no special treatment. Like, we know he going to jail, you feel me? But no special treatment. I mean, the prosecution needs to be clear about that. Ain't nothing special about you. You killed somebody, you have been found guilty of 3 different charges, you go on the general population, period.
I also spoke with both of them about the recent shootings that took place minutes after the guilty verdict of Derek Chauvin was announced. The unfortunate incident that has taken place with our sister who there in Columbus, Ohio, has already sparked much debate, not just in America, but also within the Black community about whether or not the shooting was justified. Just what are your perspectives on on the whole shooting?
Well, as a Muslim, I would say that by the fact that it was a female makes it additionally disgusting to the extrajudicial arbitrary executions carried out of our people. By the fact that it was a woman actually speaks more into the lack of humanity of the perpetrators who carry out these heinous crimes. The Columbia Law School had put out a paper in 2015 entitled Black Girls Matter, pushed out, over-policed, and underprotected. And they, through their extensive research, highlighted a school-to-prison pipeline with our girls. And they spoke to the inordinate proportion of Black girls who are expelled from schools. And that there's this perception of our girls in the same way that there's a perception of our males. One commentator used the phrase that they see when the police are about to kill a Black man, that they see them as superhuman in a subhuman way.
Student Minister David also discussed plots against Black youth in America. That's going to be the topic of his soon to be released book. And so make sure you get the opportunity. We'll have him back on to talk about that book. But for right now, what we're going to do, we'll pause and we'll get into our public announcements.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps us to highlight solutions for a brighter tomorrow. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Asiatic Minds. Online education. Helping our children to discover their God-given skills, gifts, talents, and passion that will allow them to see their greatness, as well as the greatness of our people. And upon discovering that greatness, infusing them with the desire to use it for the betterment of themselves, their families, our people, and the world. Call now, 502-219-4848.
This is Sister Sajda Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajda House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
The hashtag Bank Black social media campaign made strides not only in revolutionizing how we bank, but also how we think. The movement inspired thousands of African Americans across the country to transfer or deposit millions of dollars into Black-owned banks. These are banks that will invest in urban communities, employ African Americans, support Black businesses, and inspire Black home ownership. This is a very proud moment for our culture as we are taking small but significant steps towards building Black power through Black wealth.
Thank you for tuning in to NNV News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comments section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Network View. This is Clifton Muhammad with nnvnews.com.
Recently, hip-hop legend and New Orleans native MasterP spoke about how hip-hop needs a union that can help provide services for artists during and after their careers.
Icons while they're alive. Imagine all the stuff that we could have prevent for DMX to help him. And I feel like hip-hop needs some type of union. The NBA have it. You know, what happened when a guy fall off? You know, after he done sold millions and millions of records, even a female, what happened? We need that. And so I think it starts with education. I want to really just start educating our people and letting them see that even from LeBron to KD to Kyrie Irving, everybody that represent Black Lives Matter, when the NBA talk about they put money back into HBCUs, I want to see where that money go at.
So we're back with our monthly contributors, Dr. Asad Malik and Dr. Abdul Haleem Muhammad, and we'll get right down to this discussion. I'll start with you, Dr. Asad. Do you think hip hop needs a union? If so, why? And if not, why?
I think it would be an important step towards ensuring that many artists are not left destitute after their fame and their 15 minutes of fame has ended. But prior to that, I think what most artists need is mentorship from people like MasterP, who I know has personally mentored several young artists, Kodak Black and a few other artists, to go over their contracts to ensure that they are getting at least a percentage of their masters, that they're getting the right points on each record sold or each download. So they need more mentorship. I believe a union is a good thing, but we can start with mentorship, someone that can review their contracts, someone that can help them book their own shows to remain as independent from the record label as possible, someone to make sure they're earning the proper amount on merchandise and ticket sales. So they're small. We have great artists who have achieved great success, from the Jay-Z's to the Nas's to Lil Wayne's. These people have had their public disputes. For instance, Lil Wayne had his public dispute with his record label. He learned a lot from that experience, and he should be able to coach and mentor those who are coming behind him so that they don't have to face the same type of obstacles that he faced with his record.
Yes, sir. And Dr. Abdul Haleem, what do you think? Does hip hop need a union?
I think anytime that we can get better organized, we need to get organized. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan points out that the #1 denial objective of our oppressor is that we don't be effectively organized. So to the extent, as Dr. Asad has said, that we can have rights to our songs, distribution rights, legal assistance, retirement plans, investment and financial advice, and marketing and branding. Because many times these artists, you know, they get money up front, more money than they've ever seen before, but they haven't really read the fine print of their contract. And if you remember Prince's protests during many of the award ceremonies where you had slave written on his face, because if you sign what they call a 360 or 360 deal, these people own your name, they own your image, they own everything about you. So I think it's very important, because if you're very careful, you can listen to many of our famous rap songs being played in fast food commercials and other commercials, and you're saying to yourself, whoa, I wonder if they're getting paid for that.
And as Master P talked about the concept of unions, I thought about what I read in the book, How White Folks Became Rich. And it talked about how the guy Samuel Gompers, I believe, who started the unions, actually did it as a way to cut out blacks and give jobs to immigrants, right? So my question to you, Dr. Asad, and then we'll go back to Dr. Abdul Haleem, have unions benefited black people in America then and even today?
Well, we know historically black people were locked out of many unions. However, when we look at like the teachers union here locally, or even the civil service unions that we have, black people have recently benefited from those type of protections, that type of collective bargaining agreement that comes with unions. So I do believe that there are some benefits, but as with anything in the United States of America, there will be some racism and white supremacy, which will not allow black people to achieve the most benefit out of those union organizations.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Dr. Abdul Haleem, what are your thoughts?
There are three competing forces, as I've seen, say over the last 50 years. There's been big business, big government, and big labor. And big business, you know, after the Depression, the 1930s, you know, something about capitalism. Capitalism knows how to survive. So it actually described itself or masqueraded as socialism for a minute. Then it came back strong and in the deregulation and in the trickle-down economics economy of the conservatives, and we saw the power of big labor diminished. So what we see right now is, to any extent that we can get organized, I'm for it. But most importantly, it gives us an opportunity that if you're going to be a part of this union, there has to be some standard of behavior for people to receive the benefits. So we want to see our hip hop artists directed towards speaking and teaching truth, liberation lyrics, salvation songs, and revolutionary rap. I think that is what is needed today, because when someone can control your message, and he said, well, I want to put a little Malcolm X or Martin Luther King or Minister Farrakhan or Kwame Ture in my rap. No, you can't do that. Look, we need a little bit of the B and the H and a little, keep it street, man, keep it real kind of thing. And this has happened to many of our conscious rappers, and they'll tell you they can't get the market, they can't get the spins, they can't get the radio play, and that particular songs don't get promoted and have to be done underground. So there has to be some standard of behavior connected with the benefits that go along with belonging to the union. I think that would go a long way in building our community and organizing.
Yes, sir. And Dr. Asad, why do you think, I don't hear a chorus following Master P's call, a suggestion for a union? Do you think that this is something that the overall hip hop community will be willing to get behind?
Absolutely. I believe that Master P has proven himself to be a very intelligent businessman. He has the street credibility with most of the rappers in the rap community. I believe it'll take some time for him to pitch his ideas to the right people, and we'll see more people getting behind the idea of a union. Some people won't. I was once told that maximum security is a prison. We have a lot of individuals in the hip hop community who are wealthy, who are fine with being $40 million slaves or $100 million slaves. So they may not want to mess up their, their sponsorships or their endorsement deals by doing something that will help so many young Black people involved in the hip hop community. So they'll choose security over organization. However, I do believe that we have enough conscious-minded hip hop artists who have experienced a lot of detriment as it relates to their contracts, will be willing to work with Master P and other hip hop artists to formulate this union.
Definitely. And before we go into our next break in the next two minutes, so Dr. Haleem, what do you think? Why haven't the other artists jumped on this and come to support it, make this a reality?
Dr. Asad hit the nail on the head. You have to remember, brother, we went from saying that we were Black and we were proud to being Afro-Americans and minorities. We went from us, our, and we to I, me, and mine. I got to get mine. I got to get paid. I. And so it's about individuality and not about our collective work that we need to do. But if they ever decide to listen to the voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who was instrumental in solving the beef between the East Coast and the West Coast that actually led to actual bloodshed, and has been in the ears of all of these hip hop artists to buy the block in the case of Rick Ross, and of course this comeback by our brother Busta Rhymes. The young boys wonder where he came from, where he been, but that was a blockbuster Busta Rhymes rap album that he put out, and seeing what moves that Jay-Z is making, P. Diddy is making, and of course our brother Master P. I've interviewed him on my radio show at the time. The brother is brilliant in what he's saying, and he already has proved it. And you've heard Snoop Dogg bear witness to him and how he treated him and steered him away from a conflict with Suge Knight that would have probably resulted in bloodshed. And he wound up paying him and taking care of him. And he said, man, this is my man. So we have to give a good ear to Master P and our full support of what he's trying to do. What the end product will be, I don't know. But I think it's very important that at least we be found attempting to organize ourselves better.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank both of you all for your comments. In our next segment after this, these public announcements, we're going to talk about the question, is America a racist country? So we'll get right back to that segment with our contributors right after these public announcements.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Worldwide, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Download the Final Call Radio app and take us everywhere. On your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also log on to finalcall.com and click the Listen Live button, or finalcallradio.com. Final Call Radio, the official voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam.
Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel at National Network View. I am Anissa Muhammad with nnvnews.com.
After the unofficial State of the Union by President Joe Biden, U.S. Senator Tom Scott gave the rebuttal, which sparked a backlash on social media when he said America is not a racist country. The controversy, however, did not stop there, because the next day, the Vice President Kamala Harris said during an interview that she agreed with what Tim Scott said.
They were inferior. Today, kids are being taught that the color of their skin defines them again. And if they look a certain way, they're an oppressor. From colleges to corporations to our culture, people are making money and gaining power by pretending we haven't made any progress at all, by doubling down on the divisions we've worked so hard to heal. You know this stuff is wrong. Hear me clearly. America is not a racist country. It's backwards to fight discrimination.
I said last night that America is not a racist country. Do you agree with that? And what do you make of his warning against fighting discrimination with more discrimination?
I believe that we need to, well, first of all, no, I don't think America is a racist country, but we also do have to speak truth about the history of racism in our country and its existence today. And I applaud the president for always having the...
So let's get straight down to it, brothers. Is America a racist country? And if you say that it isn't, what's one example that you can give to show otherwise? I'll start with you, Dr. Abdul Haleem, and then we'll go to our brother, Dr. Asad.
By every indication, and I'll give you one indicator: ownership. Ownership. This country was founded by 39 white male property owners at the Constitutional Convention. It's about ownership. Now, when you look at any indicators by ownership, I don't care how many black people are in the NFL or NBA, how many of them own teams, corporations, how many of us own corporations, our businesses. Most of them, the black enterprises, are single proprietor businesses. Name me an indicator by which that does not prove that black people are on the bottom and white people are on the top. And if you don't think that America is racist, then ask the Native American. I'll close with this. Definition of racism isn't the color of your skin. It's prejudice plus power. I can be prejudiced, but I don't have the power to affect you in a bank loan, admission to college, or any other factor of whether I go to jail or not, whether my community is over-policed. But those who have prejudice and power do exercise it, and they exercise it every day, and they're exercising it to this day.
Thank you. So, Dr. Asad, is America a racist country?
Absolutely, America is a racist country. You know what Senator Tim Scott and Vice President Harris attempted to do to Black Americans in particular, but the Americans in general, was bipartisan gaslighting. It reminded me of an old comedy skit of Richard Pryor, where he talked about cheating, and he said, if your wife catches you cheating, you ask her, who you gonna believe, me or your lying eyes? Here we have last year, the entire summer of 2020, protesting, and the central theme of the protest was to get the American populace to agree that Black lives matter, that our humanity is of importance and of significance in this world. How can we argue that America is not a racist country here we are 400 years later still trying to convince the government of the United States that our lives matter? I mean, we had from 1776 and the founding of this nation until 1865, African Americans were enslaved. That's 90 years. Another 100 years of lynching, and then another 60 years of Jim Crow. We've only had 60 years since the Civil Rights Movement and the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, and we are still being mowed down in the streets. We are still mass incarcerated. We are still, our communities are still underfunded. We're still being redlined out of certain sections and gentrified out of other sections. I'm trying to figure out what legitimate argument can be made to say that America is not a racist country. And I'll close with this. Forrest Gump's mother said in the movie, stupid is as stupid does. Well, racism is as racism does.
Hit him with the Forrest Gump. So Tim Scott also went forward, Dr. Abdul Haleem. He said that in this country has went from teaching Black children that their skin was a curse and a disgrace to now teaching white children that their skin is a sign that they're of an oppressor. Is there any validity from your perspective in what he said?
No. My brother, he had to toe the partisan line. And Kamala Harris, my sister, has to present herself as being reasonable and not radical, because she's one heartbeat away from being the president of these United States. So understand that our Black politicians are actually Black managers of white people's reality. I'm not trying to condemn white people or even cause them to suffer from, as Shelby Steele calls it, white guilt. Our job as Muhammad's, as the followers of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the modern day Muhammad, is to be plain warners and to let them know that the original sin of America is its racism and what it did in kidnapping our people and stealing the land from the indigenous people. And our job is to warn them so that they will not receive what they've earned of the wrath of God. If they repent from their sins, God will heal the land and they will have prosperity. If they do not, they will face the wrath of God for their sins. They can go look up one of their own founding fathers who was at the Constitutional Convention, George Mason. He refused to sign the Constitution. He was the largest slave owner of all, but you should read what he even debated while they were debating the last compromise on importation of slaves. He said that national sins beget national calamities. He was talking about slavery and in the constant importation of Africans, and his words are ringing true. We're at a racial reckoning, but it's really not a racial reckoning. It's a reckoning of the judgment and the wrath of Almighty God.
Thank you. Dr. Asad, is what Tim Scott said, that white children are learning that being taught in schools that they're the oppressor because they're white?
No, he is absolutely incorrect. Their learning is a true history that has not been whitewashed. And they're learning that the sins of their fathers are still present here today in the contemporary United States. You know, Tim Scott is just proof that the plantation is portable and that others can ventriloquize white supremacy.
Wow. Dang. The plantation is portable. Oh my goodness. That's a new one, my doc. So leading up to this, you know, lastly, prior to the election of VP Harris, there were black people who expressed concerns about her record and her commitment to black people. And to see her follow up and say the same thing that, hey, Tim Scott was right, starting with you, Dr. Abdul Haleem, and then we'll close out with our brother. Does her comments confirm the criticism that people had about her during the campaign, from your perspective?
Well, I'll put it like this, brother, just as a general principle. Politicians run and they say a whole lot of things, but they get in office and they find out there's a whole nother reality when the briefing papers are put on their desk. What they think about wars and ending wars or committing to wars. And when that briefer comes in and briefs them about what's really going on, what the FBI is looking at, what the CIA is doing overseas, what the multinational corporations desire or consider to be America's vital interests, they say one thing, but when they get that briefing and they find out what's really going on, they'll act otherwise. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan takes us back to the Kerner Commission report. And the Kerner Commission report said that we lived in two Americas, one black, one white, separate and unequal. And what we have today is the same thing. We've got some rich white people, ultra rich white people, and we got some really poor black people, and we've got some store mannequins in the department store trying to sell us on this great opportunity that you and I could still be a soul trained dancer if we study hard, work by the rules, and keep on working. No, brothers and sisters, we need real freedom, real justice, real equality. And right now, the game is fixed against us. We really need to organize ourselves so we can get free.
So Dr. Asad, I saw you shaking your head saying that those criticisms are right and exact, and it confirms, you know, based upon her words. Can you share more about your thoughts on that?
This is the same woman who ran for president and sat in front of a black reporter when asked if she would do anything for black people. She said, I'm not just going to do something specifically just for black people. And she gave us the sister girl head shake and all of that. She said it. She is who she said she was. She said she's not going to do anything for black people. So she's not going to do anything for black people. She's not going to specifically stand up to racism and white supremacy when confronted about the historical reality of this nation. She would not do it. So she is who she said she was.
Wow, and that's very interesting. And I know we didn't get a chance to cover it. Any of you all have thoughts about, you know, because this was said after Biden talked about his 100 days. Any of you all want to share briefly your thoughts about his 100 days thus far?
I didn't hear anything specifically for African Americans. We need race-specific policies. It was race-specific policies that got us into this situation. It was race-specific. Redlining was race-specific. Gentrification is race-specific. Jim Crow was race-specific. Slavery was race-specific. I need race-specific policies, and he didn't mention anything race-specific, so it's more of the same. But I'm just really dumbfounded by what would black folk expect anything else. This is a man who spent nearly 50 years in Congress writing laws to lock us up, right? This is the same Jim Crow Joe that we have been dealing with. So I'm really not. I'm more shocked that black people are shocked that he's been in office 100 days and we still don't have an agenda for us. However, there was an Asian specific Lives Matter bill. I don't even know the name of the bill passed specifically for Asian Americans when we had 8 years of Barack Obama, and black folk were telling me that he can't do anything just for black people. Man, we sick, boss.
And so thank you, my brother. We got 1 minute, brother Dr. Lee. Any thoughts?
I just could say amen to my brother, Dr. Asad. I mean, that's reality, brother. And until we come to set our own unapologetically black agenda, and the Congressional Black Caucus go back to its original motto, no permanent enemies, no permanent friends, just permanent interests, and act on those interests, we'll still be in this position 400 years from now if America still exists.
Yes, sir. And thank you all. So in our last segment, we're going to talk about the rise of protest bills that are starting to come up post the Black Lives Matter movement and other efforts by Black organizations to fight against this brutality that Black people are facing throughout America. So we'll do that right after these announcements.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. Cash App NNV News.
Greetings from National Network View. This week's Final Call cover story headline memorializes the late, great DMX. Last week, DMX's life was celebrated at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. Large crowds gathered to honor the legend. They were there to remember a man who wasn't afraid to express his pain with the world. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan spoke via Zoom to the large audience. He delivered words of comfort, wisdom, and guidance to everyone under the sound of his voice. DMX will live on. This FCN volume number 29 edition features the middle page article is a transcript of what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said at the memorial. To read more, subscribe to finalcalldigital.com and tune in to the all-new Final Call Radio. This is the nnvnews.com Final Call cover report.
This is Sister Sajda Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajda House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
Please make sure you leave your comments and questions in the comment section below. Follow us on Facebook, National Network View, and make sure to check us out on Twitter as well, National Network View. This is Sergio Gutierrez with National Network View, signing off.
In response to the rise of public demonstrations, government officials at the state and federal level have introduced a variety of bills that target protest activity.
In the aftermath of the Derek Chauvin trial, many cities are taking a closer look at policing and racial injustice, but several states are setting their sights instead on protest. In Florida on Monday, Republican Governor Ron DeSantis signed what he dubbed an anti-riot bill. Among other things, it prevents jailed protesters from bailing out until they've appeared before a judge. It ups the penalties for toppling monuments, and it makes it easier for drivers to escape liability if they hit a protester with their car. Florida's Republican House Speaker Chris Sprouse was quoted in the New York Times saying, quote, "We weren't going to allow Florida to become Seattle. We were not going to allow Florida to become Portland."
So, Dr. Asad, I'll start off with you. How is it that a country whose foundation is based upon protest, that we're now seeing elected officials attempting to restrict such activities?
You know, before I answer that, I find it funny that he said we're not going to allow Florida to become Portland or Seattle, but he didn't say we're not going to allow Florida to become Washington, D.C., when on January 6th, we had white nationalists and Trump supporters storm the very capital of the United States. It's just funny to me. Back to your question, brother. Repeat it for me.
So how is it that this country that boasts about how it started on protest, the Boston Tea Party, the Boston Massacre, right? That now you're seeing elected U.S. officials attempting to restrict protests?
At the root of all of these bills, at the root of this entire conversation, and we can talk specifically about the 34 bills around the country, but at the root of this is citizenship. And again, I tell Black people, we are not full-fledged citizens of the United States. We are only semi-citizens, second-class citizens. So those, the Boston Tea Party and our constitutional right to protest and freedom of speech and to redress our grievances with the federal government, that does not apply to Black people. That is for citizens of the United States. And we are not citizens. We're not full-fledged citizens. We are semi-citizens, meaning we have the obligation to pay taxes, but we can't demand that the allocation of those funds be invested into social services and crime preventative measures, as opposed to police officers who are killing us in the streets, right? We have again, we are second class citizenry, and until we understand that, we really want to understand why these laws are being written. In 1780, Virginia wrote a law that said a slave master can kill a slave and not face any charges. It would be like the incident never happened. That's essentially what's taking place in Florida. You can mow down people in the street. Where else do people protest, Brother Willie? Besides in the street. Besides in the streets, we don't protest on the sidewalks. The idea of disobedience finds its roots in Henry David Thoreau, and finds its African roots or African American roots and Dr. King. We protest in the streets. Civil disobedience is about disrupting the society. Now there in Florida, I believe his name is DeSantis. Governor DeSantis has given basically free range on killing Black people with via vehicular homicide. And this is because I apologize if I'm taking too much time, because we are not full-fledged citizens of the United States. Citizens don't have to worry about their right to vote every 25 years, every 30 years, every 10 years. Citizens don't have to worry about their right to protest. Our white brothers and sisters in Iowa, North Dakota, and Wyoming don't give a damn about a protest bill. They don't give a damn about a voter suppression, because they know that it is guaranteed and they are protected under the Constitution because they are citizens. We must start understanding and realizing our position as African Americans in this country, in the United States.
Yes, sir. So Dr. Abdul Haleem, so are there efforts to restrict protests? Is this an indicator, a witness bearing or evidence that protests are effective? So that's why they're trying to muzzle or restrict their activities, such activities, from your perspective?
Effectiveness means nothing. It's all about they want to remain in charge. Trust me, it matters not whether we're talking conservatives or liberals. White supremacy wants to be in charge, regardless. There is Father Knows Best, Ku Klux Klan conservatism, and then there's nanny state liberalism. Either one will restrict us. If we decide, we say we want to do for self, the liberal will get upset and say, oh, after all the help I've given you. And then the Father Knows Best conservative will say, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, even though he controls all the boots and the straps. This is a game that's fixed against us. And until we sit down and talk to one another about the option of separation, you see, we've tried integration, assimilation. We have tried all accommodation, but we have not talked about really put on the other side of the coin, flip that coin over, and talk about reparations, separations, and repatriation. When we have that serious conversation, you go back to the turn of last century and the Niagara movement and William Monroe Trotter and those who put together, and W.B. Du Bois was part of that Niagara movement. But when you look at that manifesto, and do you know that none of them joined the NAACP with W.B. Du Bois? Because those whites and Jews who started the NAACP, who were the benefactors and the patrons, believed in non-economic liberalism. So until we look at Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, David Walker, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, Booker T. Washington, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X, and today the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan on that other side, and Dr. King in the last year of his life, until we do that, we will continue to be in this position over and over again. They're going to continue to pass these laws and do what they do because Black lives don't matter.
Can I, Brother Willie?
Definitely. Let me ask you this question. You can add to that, because this kind of connects to the question I asked them. You know, some felt that the potential of violent protests influenced the outcome of Derek Chauvin, his verdict, as well as put the pressure on him and other officers in the Department of Justice to put pressure on local police offices to arrest and prosecute police officers. So do you think the possibility of like violent protests have strengthened the fight for civil rights, and HI that also that these protests are affected? You can add.
Yeah, and I agree with it. We need to look if the threat of violent protests pushing people to convict Chauvin, I'm with it. We need to do it again. That it was an interesting speech I was watching by Omar Suleiman. He was speaking on Malcolm X and Martin. He said that Malcolm went down to Selma, Alabama, and I believe at the time Dr. King was incarcerated. But his purpose of going down there was to basically, in general, to say, hey, if they see me here, they know there's another option. So they need to give Dr. King what he wants by the way that he wants it, through nonviolent protest. Malcolm also sent a telegram to the head of the KKK or the Aryan Brotherhood, and he reminded them that that he was no longer under the control of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and that if anyone had touched Dr. King, that he was willing to send some people down there and deal with them on a man-to-man basis. So, but I wanted to add to what Doc was saying. W.B. Du Bois is obviously an intellectual genius, right? And as a dissident, Black leftist intellectual, he is one of my idols. And one of the most important things that we can learn from Dr. W.B. Du Bois's life is that he died in Ghana. All of his fighting, he knew that there was no winning this war. And that's all I want my people to understand. There's no winning this war. There's no amount of reparations. There's no amount of legislation policy. Let's talk about South Africa for a minute. After the end of apartheid, South Africa rewrote their constitution because they said something's not right here. Because it's written in the apartheid and the racism and the white supremacy was written in the founding document. We have yet to rewrite our constitution to address some of the issues that face African Americans. So again, Dr. Du Bois died in Ghana. He understood after all of that fighting, 103 years old, I believe he was, or I may have got his age wrong, but he was very old, 91 or whatever it was. He was a very old man. And after all of that fighting, he said, this is not it. It's not going to happen here. It won't.
I visited his grave in Ghana. And what Dr. Asad Malik is saying is absolutely true. And where Du Bois ended up, as I hit on Dr. King, where Dr. King ended up, he died the day before the March on Washington. And at the end of Dr. King's life, Dr. King was closer to where the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X were than he was in 1963. And as Dr. Asad is pointing out, in fact, that's where they took his passport. Look what they did to him. Look what they did to Paul Robeson. Look what they did to every leader that stood up and spoke for us, whether they were accommodationists, integrationists, assimilationists, or they wanted reparations, separation, and repatriation. Regardless of what, there's one consistent thing about them. They were Black and they were seeking betterment for our people. Not just a few of us to make it, to be window dressing, but for the masses of our people to make it. And they all paid the ultimate price. Ida B. Delaney, excuse me, that's a sister that was killed here in Houston. Ida B. Wells. I'm thinking about Ida B. Wells. I'm thinking about all of these sisters, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, all these people. They all paid a price, and they only honored in death and never in life, but not with Farrakhan. We're going to give him his flowers while he lived, and we're going to speak his name. And it's like throwing holy water on vampires. Anytime I'm in a room, I get a chance, I'll say the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, just to see people's reactions in some cases. Maybe that's a little, it's a little mischievous. It's a little mischievous, but nonetheless, you know, they're not going to pick our leaders for us no more. Nor are they going to determine the issues by which we determine our own freedom. That's Kujichagulia. That's self-determination. We should practice the Nguzo Saba every day of the week and not just 7 days during Kwanzaa.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Dr. Asad. Close us out. 1 minute.
Well, just to back up what Doc is saying, Nelson Mandela said, you don't get to pick my friends, right? and they don't get to pick our heroes. They don't get to pick who we love, who we honor. So if we want to honor Minister Farrakhan, but here's what I warn my brothers and sisters, particularly to my brothers and sisters in the nation. If and when the brother minister passes, the same black folk who were standing with him will not make a Twitter post about him. They will not make a Facebook post about him, because of the white slave masters and the white capitalists who have controlled them. They will kowtow. They will get there and say, well, you know, he was anti-Semitic or anti-Semite, and I didn't agree with what he said on this, that, and the third. They will not offer him the honor that is deserving of a man who has spent his entire life working on behalf of black people. Whether you agree 100% with what he says or not, he has spent his entire life working on behalf of black people, and you will watch a bunch of sellout Negroes who will turn their backs on the brother at the moment he closes his eyes.
There's a price to pay for that kind of treachery today. This generation is that Joshua generation, and they won't tolerate it.
Thank you, brothers. You all always provide great, insightful commentaries. I always look forward to you all coming up that first Monday of the month. So thank you all also for tuning in. This is National Network View. Make sure you tune into us. We are daily network news, online news network. Hit the like button, brothers and sisters. Leave comments and make sure you subscribe and share these links. This is your brother, Willie Muhammad, with National Network View.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.